Hey friend, welcome to Quest Givers. We're going to be talking about one of my favorite things today, and that's how to introduce a dilemma and what does that mean. So this is one of my favorite things at game. So let's get started, Gareth. Oh, also, one last thing. Our new module, the Loyalists, is ready for purchase. So make sure you check that out in the store at the Quest Givers website, questgivers.com. And I hope you pick that up because it's fantastic and it has a lot to do with this episode that we're talking about today.
If you're looking for adventure, excitement, thrills, and a dice-rolling good time, sit back and enjoy the next few minutes with Quest Givers DM Scotty and DMG. They're taking you on an epic journey through the role-playing experience every Friday. Learn the ways of the Game Master, the Dungeon Master, and delve into the minds of the players. Grab the modules each month to support the channel and play the campaign with your gaming group. You're sure to get hooked on adventure.
So what on earth is a dilemma? We touched on this 2 videos ago in the sort of different motivations that motivating players to take a quest. And we talked about the dilemma briefly there. So just to reiterate, the dilemma is you've got 2 options and both of them are not good. And the consequences of not taking one option is the other one gets somehow screwed over. And so taking either option is not necessarily a good idea, but you have to choose one of the 2. Now, Scotty, how have we approached this in the Loyalists?
Oh yes, Gareth. This is pretty cool, the Loyalist module, because it's kind of what the module's based around, like the dilemma of choosing the particular factions. We have a couple factions, and you have the choice between the 2. So, you have to decide which one is going to work for you. Which one do you think is better? Which one do you believe, right? So it's not immediately apparent in the module, what you should choose or what the best one is. But if you don't choose one, you could be in really big trouble because then both factions might be after you. So you've kind of got to choose one. You've got to choose a side to have an ally in this strange place, a strange land. So yeah, it's a very interesting dilemma.
Yeah, it again comes down to the moral imperative, the duty, and the consequence we talked about in that previous video as well. And it really sort of drives this point home when you have a dilemma, because both could be good options to take, but there's going to be a severe consequence from not taking one of them. And so, how do you choose? And part of the reason that a dilemma becomes a dilemma is usually from incomplete information. You don't have all the facts, and so you're operating on incomplete information. And that's vital to creating a good dilemma. It's like you have to make the split-second decision based on incomplete information. And no matter which way you go, you or the person who you're not choosing is going to be screwed. And so it makes the choice more interesting. And again, anything that's creating tension and is creating drama is going to be good for the story. And we talked about before condensing the time element as well to motivate a quick decision, because that's important in a dilemma. You've got to kind of make the quick decision. You can't have them sitting around for 2 weeks mulling over what way are we going to go. It has to happen now.
Yeah, so the world is happening around you, right? And you don't have a lot of time to sit there and think about, what you're going to do. That can be really interesting. Like in my games, I love to throw these things at the players, and they don't have days and days to sit around and postulate, well, what would be the best course of action? It's like they have to decide quickly, and that makes the game really interesting when the players are kind of put on the spot and they have to decide, how they're going to deal with this dilemma.
And the dilemma doesn't necessarily need to be a moral one. The dilemma can also be a monetary reward dilemma. Do you take the +1 sword, or do you take the 500 gold pieces? The 500 gold pieces may be falling off a precipice and the sword is an easy thing to grab. But is the sword worth 500 gold? We don't know. That's the incomplete information. It could be a cursed +1 sword. You don't know. So you've got to make the split-second decision as to what's actually, so when it gets down to the granularity of playing, you can introduce dilemmas in that respect as well. They don't need to be huge story dilemmas. They can be just sort of micro dilemmas that makes the game quite interesting. Now, I think we should put a caveat on this and say, don't have a dilemma in every single game and every single scene, all right? Use it very sparingly, because constant dilemmas can lead to extreme player frustration, and yeah, that when you sort of frustrating the players all the time, the drama and tension you're creating in the game becomes drama and tension in your world, not in your playing world, in your real world where the players don't like you anymore.
You don't want to overuse this, because if you do, like you say, you're going to frustrate the players, right? It's a great tool when, used properly, but if overused, you're going to end up frustrating your players. So yeah, don't overuse this tool, even though it's a great thing for drama in the game. That's a great point. Don't overuse it.
And there's a huge dilemma that happens in the very final module as well. I'm not going to tell you what it is, only that there is a huge dilemma that one player is going to have to make a decision. And this has been built in from the very first module. We've been thinking about this and what this is going to mean. It sort of begins to break into it, in about module 9, I think it is. And then, this player has to make this decision at the end. It doesn't matter which way they go. It's just a kind of final bookend to the story, which we feel is a really nice sort of twist, and it's subverting player expectation that will make the game memorable. So it doesn't need to be a dilemma now. You can use player actions and consequences of actions to create a dilemma later on. You know your players and what they're going to be doing. We don't know your players, so we have to kind of guess, and we have to kind of force in a subtle way to a dilemma, but you as the DM will know how you can put that into the game and mess with your players' heads a little bit. But yeah, again, don't do it every single game. We do it twice really in this whole, in 12 modules. So really, you want to keep it that limited, because, it's fun when you do it every now and again. It's not fun when you do it every game and every scene.
It's an adversity that you really get to see, how the players view their characters. And when they make these decisions in the game, about with a dilemma where they have these hard choices, right? That really gives you maybe unexpected results that you're not sure what the character is going to do. And for me, that's kind of the funnest aspect of role playing, when you get to see these kind of things, and how they play out. And this is a great test for that, when you're role playing.
You have no idea which way they're going to go, so you don't know which choice they're going to make. So you've got to be on your toes with the consequences for both, because you have no idea which way the players are going to go. And it's very difficult to predict. It's very difficult, even if you know the players very well. When you have the right dilemma, you'll know it's right, because you won't be able to predict what they're going to do.
And a dilemma can really juice up your role playing, right? So, maybe the situation where the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? Where, you might run into a situation where the enemy's just monologuing and you just kind of sit there and listen. Well, if it's kind of going to benefit both of you to fight, a common enemy, you're going to be back and forth. It's not just going to be a monologue that the villain is laying on you. Maybe he starts with a monologue, and then you're like, well, maybe we could team up, and find some mutual, ground here. And so that just is really, like super, super juice for like role playing. It's just like charging up the role playing. I just love it.
And a good dilemma is one that a role is not going to solve their decision. How will my character decide? It may come down to that the player can't decide, and therefore they roll a dice to see which way their character would go. But the player will have actually mulled it over in their brain for a while to consider what it is the character would actually do. And that makes for a good dilemma when the players are having to think and use the gray matter between their skull here. That makes for good gameplay. And yeah, you can roll out the result, but the better ones are the ones where the players start to all talk amongst each other and like, wow, what are we going to do? You know, what is the consequence of what happens here if we don't do this or we do that? And these are the things that people remember. When you insert these things into a game, that becomes a memorable moment within your game. So as a sort of an outside of game experience, when you finish a session and people are walking to the car or they're texting each other after the game or whatever, those are the things they're going to talk about. You know, wow, that was really interesting how we had to make that choice. You know, what would have happened if we'd gone the other way? So the game continues on the sort of proto-narrative of what might happen next in the game. These sort of things go beyond the actual game itself. And when players start to discuss the game outside of the game, they may talk to a friend and say, geez, I played this great game. We had this choice where we just couldn't decide which way to go. And it came down to, we flipped a coin in the end. I think we might have gone the wrong way, but I'm going to find out next week. And then the person goes, wow, this sounds really interesting. I may want to play in this game. So memorable moments create adverts for your campaign. And you can use that as a tool for players to bring other players into the game. So yeah, it's a part of building those memories, because these are the things people are going to remember. They're not going to remember, that they rolled a crit against an orc in a cavern. They're not going to remember that stuff. They're going to remember these sort of story details that made them think, that sort of built the memories in their mind. That's going to really solidify how good the game was in their mind.
This is interesting too. For dilemmas, the players may not have all the information. Like they may have figured they've sussed all the information, but there's always some information that's hidden that may bite them, down the line in the campaign. Or even if they do, know the information, there's going to be consequences to every action. And those are the best campaigns. And it's very prevalent in this campaign where, there's always consequences to your actions. That's what makes the game interesting. And when you make these, especially with a dilemma, you had to make this choice, and it maybe wasn't your favorite choice, but you just you had to go with it. And then later on, you see the kind of ramifications of that in the game, and the players are like, oh, did we make the right choice? I don't know now. Oh, all these things are happening from the choice we made. So that just makes the game so interesting. I love that kind of stuff. I live for that kind of stuff.
I mean, I did this to Scotty and Hankerin and Jeremy from Black Magic Craft in our second Tilvertonian game, which hasn't been put on YouTube yet. But there's constant, they don't know if they've made the right choice. So they've made the choice, but they don't know if they've made the right choice, and it's not really being revealed to them. So they kind of have to, all right, we're going to keep doing a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And see what happens. And they're going deeper and deeper into something. They don't know if they're going deeper into something good or they're going deeper into something bad. And that keeps them like, okay, well, maybe we'll do just a little bit more, just a little bit more. And that keeps the game going. It keeps it interesting. The problem there is I threw in a lot of time travel, which starts to mess with people's heads. Be very careful with time travel. Keeping everything up in the air is very, very difficult when it comes to time travel. So I don't suggest doing that if you're new to DM. Save that for decades down the line.
Kind of an interesting example in my home game was I had this gnome who was kind of this cock-up. He was a thief NPC, and he was just this cock-up, and he the players kept running into him and that kind of thing. And he stole from one of the players, and also it was blackmailing them basically that he was going to tell their enemies about them, right? So they kind of had this dilemma, like, well, how do we deal with this? And the other character, one of the this very low intelligence character, ended up murdering murdering the gnome, got mad at him and murdered the gnome, you know, trying to protect one of the other characters in the group. And, you know, it was just like, oh, you know, it was a horrible, you know, situation, but, you know, it happened and they kind of moved on. But anyways, you know, they kind of forgot about that, you know, as the campaign moved on, they forgot about that. Then later on, you know, it's like fun to bring stuff back up that they may have forgot about, that these dilemmas they may have forgot about, like they didn't know it, but they met the gnome's sister. And she was, you know, this character on a boat, and they were, you know, on the boat with her, and so they had a lot of time, you know, with her, and she was talking about how she missed her brother and all this kind of stuff. And then it started, as she described him as, you know, this kind of cock-up thief and all this stuff, it started dawning on them that, oh, wait, you know, we murdered her brother. And, you know, I was making them feel guilty how sad she was, you know, missing him. I know he was, you know, I know he was a total mess up, but, you know, I loved him and all this kind of stuff. So you can really milk that for great RP moments, right?
Especially if they make the wrong decision. Now, the wrong decision is you've put a moral imperative to save a person, let's say, and they decide, no, let's kill them and take their gold. They're going to meet the consequences of that, not immediately. Put that further in, you know. That happened to be the guy that had the information which would have made your quest very easy. But now that guy's dead. Fred is dead. So we don't have this information anymore. So now you got to go the long way to the Tomb of Horrors. So yeah, I think this is a key thing to adding drama and making the game interesting and making the game memorable.
Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed this episode about dilemmas in your game and what are they. So yeah, and we have a ready-made dilemma in the Loyalists all ready to go for you. You know, it's a big part of the module. So check out the Loyalists on our website, questgivers.com. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and take care, happy gaming, and go forth and quest.